joints of marijuana, you can land up in state prison for many years. You have similar policies in other parts of the South. You know, you have half of the drug arrests in the United States right now are simply for marijuana possession, and that doesn't count all the 5 million people under the supervision of the parole and probation systems that are landing up in jail and prison for marijuana violation. So look, we live in a federal system. We have 50 states. Inevitably, there are going to be different policies, just as we have different policies on gun control, different policies on gay marriage, all this sort of stuff. I think we're going to see the trend on marijuana move more and more in the direction of Colorado and Washington.
So, Paul, does this patchwork of laws make it more or less difficult as a country to deal with these issues?
Well, I think it's less difficult when there's misinformation that's being put out there by big marijuana. Look, big marijuana is like big tobacco of the 80s. They've got a lot of donors out there who are contributing millions of dollars to overall drug legalization, starting off with so-called medical marijuana, now to marijuana legalization, and their end state is overall drug legalization, where it's the boiling the frog analogy in water, and that's what we're doing to our country and to our kids. Look, I've been in law enforcement for 18 years, also worked on our California State Parole Board as a commissioner in our prison system for 3 years. Never once came across a single person there for minor possession of marijuana. Look, what we're seeing today is that some of these crimes get pled down, okay, and I also firmly believe in education and treatment for those who are addicts who need help. But look, hey, we got to put the hammer down on those who are trafficking narcotics across our communities, because I'm a dad. I got 4 kids. I don't want this stuff ending up in my school. And we talk about Colorado as a patchwork system. If we look at the research, we look at the statistics, we look at what those high school kids today are saying, everybody knows somebody in high school now who's dealing smoking pot, and the situation in Colorado has made that a grave danger for community safety and the health and well-being of children across America.
Well, our community is tweeting in a lot about the war on drugs that Paul mentioned, and also about marijuana. Jody says governments around the world are realizing that the war on drugs and cannabis prohibition are costly, deadly, and unsustainable. Andrew says in time the Reagan era and beyond the quote war on drugs will be looked upon as a major waste of taxpayer dollars. Then we got Michael, who says there needs to be a policy shift. Again, economic and budgetary forces will see that it does shift. And here's a video comment from Robert. Give him a listen.
Do current policies match up with shifting public attitudes towards marijuana policy? Absolutely not. The states of Colorado and Washington have it right. The public wants us to treat marijuana like alcohol. That is, you tax it, you regulate it, and you make it available for adults to use in the privacy of their own home. Now, 48 other states have a long way to go, but the conversation is happening. And you see it happening in various state legislatures and with ballot initiatives across the country. And the time has come to end marijuana prohibition.
Okay, Ethan, I'm going to go to you with this. 65% of millennials say they're in favor of legalizing marijuana. What should we do? Decriminalize, legalize, or stay the course?
Well, at this point, when you have, according to Gallup poll, 58% of Americans saying it's time to legally regulate marijuana like alcohol, tax it, control it, regulate it, teach people that this is a drug, it can be harmful, it can be problematic, but for most people, the greater harm with marijuana is landing up losing your job, your career, your freedom than anything else. So I think that's the answer. If you're working in the South, I'd say let's push forward on medical marijuana. Let's push forward on stopping the arrest and incarceration of people for marijuana possession. But throughout much of the country, the time's come to legally regulate this. There will be a ballot initiative this November in Oregon. There may well be one in Alaska. We're trying to figure out about California. Come 2016, a whole handful of other states will do the same thing. Look, outside the United States, Uruguay just voted to legalize marijuana. The debate's growing in other parts of the world.
Here's the thing.
So at this point, why wait? Why wait?
And Paul, I want to put this to you. We're not talking exclusively about marijuana here. We're talking about drugs more broadly. Fewer than 1% of people incarcerated in the U.S. on drug charges are on sole possession charges.
Right.
And
I want to follow up on something you said earlier, which is,
actually,
the point at which you've got to...
That's actually incorrect. That's incorrect. Those talk about people in state prison. But in point of fact, with 1/3 of all Americans in local jails, you have large numbers of people in local jails serving days, weeks, months on simple drug possession charges.
Right, and I'm not talking about jail, I'm talking about prison. I'm talking about prison here nationally. It's less than 1%. But Paul, you said we got to bring the hammer down. And it feels like with this so-called war on drugs, and I know you don't like that phrase, that the government's been trying to bring the hammer down for decades. We need a new hammer. What do we use?
Wonderful. Let me talk about this. We've got to bring the hammer down on drug cartels and those trafficking. I've got my book out, Eternal Battle Against Evil. It's about drug trafficking organizations. We don't have a war on drug addicts. We've got a war on drug cartels, drug legalization groups. We've got to make a clear distinction. I'd also like to go back to the taxation of this and why that's not going to work. In Colorado, they're putting a 27% tax on marijuana. Look, after a little while, people are going to get burnt out. They're not going to pay the 27% tax. Black market's going to come in, as it always has, to undercut them. And I'd also like to remind the viewers that while Washington and Colorado approved marijuana legalization in the last election cycle, Oregon said no, and all 4 California cities that had a similar initiative said no. And my last point is, in California, we can't even keep carjackers in our local jails. We're letting felons out of our prison left and right. You will not find a pot smoker sitting behind bars in a California jail today just for minor possession of smoking pot.
I'm gonna get some.
I'm gonna get some
Canadian here. Julianne on Facebook says legalize, don't criminalize. Sean says it should be legal. There is very few legitimate, valid, non-propaganda arguments as to why, in particular, marijuana should be illegal. And finally, we ask the question: should drug laws be implemented more at the federal or state level? Bennett says state, federally decriminalize the substances and let the people manage it how they please.
Well,
a lot of heated opinions.
Yeah, and talking about the laws and the criminal justice system, we want to get into that in a couple of minutes. Coming up, he served nearly 12 years in prison for a nonviolent drug offense and has some thoughts about how the system doesn't always make sense and how it might better serve society. You will meet Lawrence Garrison and hear his story right after the break.